Hello to everyone out there in internet land. This is Saturday Night Live, Life Recovery Ministry. We're here to help everyone, those that are here live, which we don't have very many at this particular point of the meeting, but hopefully we have some more come in. And hopefully we help you out there in internet land, because Saturday Night Live is about recovery. It's life recovery, and it's to help us to deal with the messiness of life. And we all have messiness, right? You bet. So tonight we're going to be talking about a pretty good subject. I think it's a good subject, and that is giving up control. And baby, we hate doing that, but it's so important to recognize and deal with. And I hadn't thought about this, but the Serenity Prayer talks about recognizing what's in our control and what's not in our control. But the problem is, most of us like to live and try to control what's not in our control, and we pay little attention to what's in our control because, well, oftentimes it's because it's overwhelming, so we just want to ignore it and hoping it'll go away. But the question is, how's that working for you? Not so good? Yeah. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about step 7. We humbly ask Him, God, to remove our shortcomings. And we're asking Him, and this again is an action step. We're actually doing something to involve ourselves in the process, where in the earlier steps, most of them were having to do with internal steps. This is an external step to help us to take some action on what the foundation, the framework that we've already put in our life, and hopefully we'll do that. And by the way, if you've only done the steps one time, you just have started. I've done them multiple times, and every time I go through them, and every time I go through the information, every time I go even just read the steps again, but try to read them with fresh eyes, I always get new thoughts, new insight. Like this step right here is we humbly asked. And this is, if we've asked God to help us remove our shortcomings, what that means is we believe that He's there and that He can help us and that He will help us, and that's called faith. And faith pleases God. And some people would want to minimize that, but I don't believe that. I don't think we should. I think it's evident. It's right there. If we humble ourselves and we ask Him to remove these shortcomings, because we recognize in the earlier steps that we can't do it on our own, because we have come to the place that we recognize that we're out of control, our life is unmanageable, this is a big problem, and that doesn't mean that we're out of control in everything, just means these areas of addiction or compulsive issues, obsessive compulsive issues, that we need to deal with. So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about, giving up control, Jeremiah 18, 1 through 6. And is that correct? That's right, isn't it? That didn't sound right, but anyway. Yeah. Many times that I read this, for some reason I thought, that didn't look right, but okay. I want to read some thoughts, questions, and quotes. All right, how about that? I don't think I read any last week, so I'm going to hit a couple of those before we go forward. This was a new one I came up upon a few weeks ago, and this is from Teddy Roosevelt, and he said this. He said, "I care not what others think that I do, but I care very much about what I think I do." So this is talk about being self-aware, and this is talk about having personal character. Okay, it's oftentimes a lot of us, particularly nowadays, of course, probably been this way for a long time. We're very concerned about the way other people think about us. And we're not in control how they think about us. But we have way more control about how we think about us. And if we think about ourselves in a healthy way, in a positive way, then that means that we have a good, hopefully a healthy and appropriate self-image, and that empowers us, that strengthens us, that stabilizes us, that helps us to be more emotionally stabilized. We'll talk probably more about that another time. So let's go forward. So that was Teddy Roosevelt. This is Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of my favorites. Of course, he's passed away a few years ago, but I've followed him for years. And he said this: everything is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you from growing. Period. It's you get to choose. It's your choice. It's how you see things. Now, I know in my earlier years, I found that really hard because we think that how we see it is the only way that it is, and how we see it is based on our perception. And as you learn and grow and expand mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you realize it's not always the way that you think it is. It's not always what you see. And that you need to back up and get a different perspective on situations so that you can see, instead of a little narrow picture, you can see a wider picture, a more clearer picture. And if you get a wider picture, then that also means you can sometimes zoom in a little closer. So, okay, you get the big picture and you get the little picture. So that's right. Everything is either your opportunity or it's an obstacle, and it all depends on how you look at it, according to Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. I like this one, Napoleon Hill, and he's one of my favorite writers. He said this, he says, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal and greater benefit. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it is.
Because oftentimes all we emotionally see is the problem or the obstacle. But if we recognize inside of that, God has planted seeds to help us to resolve, to be strengthened, to figure out all that we need to do to be able to make our way through that. And one of his main books that actually was the first one I read of his many years ago, and that was Think and Grow Rich. And that wasn't just in finances, even though it has been used primarily for financial thinking, but it really had to do with growing mentally and spiritually. Because if you think properly, then you're going to grow properly. Does that make sense? And then, of course, then that positions you for greater financial connection, because then you can see things from a less distorted or limited perspective. Does that make sense? All right, because that's where it's all at. This is another Wayne Dyer statement. It says, the state of your life is nothing more than a reflection of the state of your mind. I'll read that again. The state of your life is nothing more than the reflection of the state of your mind. If you don't like the way your life is going, change how you're thinking. I think it was Zig Ziglar said, maybe you need to have a checkup from the neck up. You're stinking thinking, And so if we work on how we think, then We'll think differently. We'll see things differently. We will feel differently, and we'll behave differently. That's the system, okay? Now, I know that sometimes thoughts are created by how we feel, but basically, oftentimes the only control we have over our thoughts and our emotions is how we think. So if we are able to get a hold of that, and by the way, that's not easy. It's work, but it's good. Let's take a look at some others I got marked here. Let's see. I've got down that I think I stole some of this and then I created some of this. So this may be a combination statement. It says, you can't solve a problem by condemning it. You can't relieve a problem by condemning it. Okay? Judging and condemning makes you more like it. What do you think about that? And I know this last statement, last couple sentences, are what I put in there. It says, the path is forgiveness, love, grace. This is your transformation. It becomes more like you, just like Jesus. When you change yourself and stop condemning and judging and operating in grace and love and forgiveness, then you're being transformed and you become like Jesus. And that affects the situation, okay? Instead of the situation affecting you. That's what we're talking about here. Let's see what else I want to say. Are these thoughts okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
That's
I heard something the other day, my uncle's wife told me, she said, we are our own worst enemy, our own worst enemy.
absolutely.
She made a lot of sense, because I was whining to her about something, and she shut me up real quick.
Well, we exaggerate in our thinking. Oftentimes we'll exaggerate and create, because God has given us creative abilities, but trouble is we usually use it in a negative, creative way against us instead of for us. Does that make sense? And it's not the enemy out there, it's the enemy that's in me. The enemy in me. And that's my sick, distorted thinking. Like Zig Ziglar said, we need to check up from the neck up. Okay, let's see. I'm going to save the rest of this for later. So right now, Willie's going to come up and he's going to read all the 12 steps, and then he's going to go ahead and then introduce step number 7 and talk about humbly asking him to remove our shortcomings. Come on down. Thanks, Willie.
Step 1, we admitted that we were breaking the microphone. Let's try that. Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and our lives have become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact natures of our wrongs. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Step 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, we made a list of all people we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge and His will for us and the power to carry it out. Step 12, having a spiritual awakening as results of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, step 7, giving up control. We humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. Giving up control may be difficult for us. When we get ready for God to remove our shortcomings, we still want to take control. How He does it. We are so used to calling the shots that we ask for God's help as long as He does it on our terms. We may demand that the changes happen on our timetable or in the order we feel ready to give it up. God doesn't work that way. That is why humility is such an important part of this step. God told Jeremiah to go to the potter's shop to learn a lesson. Jeremiah said, I did as he told me, and I found the potter working at his wheel. But the jar that he was making did not turn out like he had hoped, so he crushed it into a lump of clay and started over again. Then the Lord gave me a message. Can I not do to you as the potter has done to the clay? As the clay is in the potter's hands, so you are in my hands. What sorrow awaits these who argue with their Creator? Does a clay pot ever argue with its maker? Does the clay dispute with the one that shapes it, saying, stop, you're doing it wrong? Does the pot explain, how clumsy can you be? When we put our lives in God's hands, He will reshape us as He sees fit. It is our humility that allows us to accept the facts that He is the Creator. Our new life may be similar to the old one or entirely different. God is the master craftsman. Whatever He does, we can trust that He will recreate our life beautifully once we get out of the way. Now, the questions that went with that. Number 1, have I ever demanded to have circumstances changed for my benefit? Yeah, because that's the way we want it. If we're going to go through this, let's at least do it our way, but it don't work out. You're just deeper in than what you realize. At least it is for me. Question 2, have I ever become impatient with God's timing in the process of changing my heart and character. If you're in a hurry, it's gonna go wrong. But to answer that, yeah, I'm an impatient man myself. That's something that has to be worked out.
I'm gonna say the way.
I'm very
I hate
impatient.
to wait. That's
Yeah.
all. I get really impatient.
If- Question 3, what keeps me from letting go so that God can shape my life better and than I could ever imagine and create myself? That one, I'm still working on, because I had to have help with it just a little bit ago, so. But anyway, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Willie.
Good job.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Thanks for reading the steps and sharing the step number 7 with us. I'm going to start off on the reflection here, and you've covered, you've covered most of it, but there's a few things that I have circled and check marked. You know, one of the first statements it has here is giving up control may be difficult for us. And that's a lightweight statement, right? Well, I don't know too many people that it's not difficult, because if we have learned to try to take care of ourselves and to survive, because we have this system inside of us that God has given us to help us to survive, and so therefore we believe the only way that we can do it is by being in control. And then what if we make choices to try to control our life, but what we're doing is actually causing our life to be infiltrated or manipulated by unhealthy things, right? Unhealthy choices, unhealthy habits, unhealthy lifestyle, unhealthy thoughts, unhealthy emotions. And so when we recognize, hey, this is not working for me, and this is where we're at, this is life recovery, we recognize there's something messed up in our life, and the fact of it is, none of us are perfect. We're all human beings, and we're all fallible. We all make mistakes, and that's where we're at. And you know, Adam and Eve started out perfect. They were given some direction what not to do. Actually, the only thing, can you believe this? They only had one thing they were not to do. You can do all of this except for this one thing. Eat this tree of knowledge. You know what? I guess even Adam and Eve, there was a part of them that felt like, if I'm going to be in control, I gotta investigate everything, maybe. Or I've always thought that they had that desire that they were supposed to grow and mature and know more and be more, and they bought into the idea that this was the fast track, the easy way. This will get me there quicker, and surely that has to be a good thing. Have you ever made a choice that you thought it would be quicker, better, faster, more money, easier, simpler, just to take this shortcut? How'd that work out for you?
Working on that.
We're still working on that. Okay, all right, and so what we need to do is, we need to come to the place that we are willing. Could this possibly, now, I don't know for sure, but could this possibly be a shortcoming? Hello? And God will help us if we ask Him. Now, He just didn't rip it out of us. He doesn't just, put us in a vice and squeeze it out of us, but He will work with us and enable us and empower us to go ahead and make those little choices, because it doesn't come all at once. Yeah, we say we want it all at once, but it's just because we say we want it, we're not always able to let go of it all at once. Do you know what I'm talking about? I think you do. So, and even when we want to give Him control, as Willie has said out of the literature, we still want to control how He does it, when He does it, how much He does it. Make sure it doesn't hurt. Okay. By the way, did you know that all healing is painful? Just think about it. All healing is painful. Now, the only thing worse than the healing pain is infectious gnawing away at our being, causing us to be sicker. Okay, that's even worse. So anyway, let's go on. So I like the scriptures here out of Jeremiah, and God told Jeremiah to go and look at the potter and see what lesson was there. And what's the lesson that Jeremiah got out of the potter? Well, it says right here. But when the jar, that clay is turning around and it's not the right shape that the potter wants. Or if there's a little flaw in it, or if there's a gravel maybe in the clay, the potter sees it. That's not not my vision, my plan, my purpose, because God has a vision, a plan, and a purpose for all of us, including you. And that he works on taking that flaw or that shortcoming or that gravel out of that clay, and this always seemed harsh to me, but this is one of the new insights I got when I was studying this scripture, and that is because I always felt bad about the fact that the potter would smash the vase, and like there was something wrong with the clay, and see, it's not what's wrong with the clay. It didn't. The potter wanted the clay to rise up to its full potential. So it wasn't the clay was bad. It was that there was something had crept in or gotten in, or there was some imperfections there, and the potter wanted the very best for this clay, so he shapes it again in the image that he had, just as God has images for all of us. And the trouble is, we oftentimes want to fight God in the shaping process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Some people are perfectionists too.
Absolutely. And
everything I do, I try to do like my art, my writing, and it's like I write the same thing over and over and over. When you're a writer, you tend to do that because, see, I don't know what I'm writing until I get done.
right.
And I have to go over it all day. But the sad thing is, when I was evicted over here, they threw all my writings away.
Sorry to hear that.
30,000 writings. And
Sorry to hear that.
It's like they're like my kids.
Right.
Okay, and that was hard to get over. But like today, it has nothing to do with what you're saying, but I sat and watched a kid OD at the park and nobody called an ambulance. I didn't have a phone. He almost died. He was there all day, stooped over. They were so, man, they aggravate me. I don't say nothing. I go down there to eat and it's like, anyway, it's pitiful that they have no respect for their brother. It doesn't matter if they do drugs or drinking, they're a human being.
Right.
And I talked to a girl a while ago and she said, good enough for him. I thought, you're just as bad as he is. You're judging him because he messed with somebody's woman. He deserved, no, he didn't. And no, man, I went to St. Louis and I just couldn't take it anymore. He sat there all day, bent over, and it's pathetic. It is, I feel sorry for these people, but I don't. You know what I mean? You gotta weigh everything.
Sure.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I just have to tell you what's going on out there, because a lot of people don't know.
It's
It's sad,
it is sad.
but,
And what Jeremiah was talking about here is that he wants, if we will allow him, if we meaning us, will allow ourselves to be shaped and molded and examined, and if we will allow him or ask him, humble ourselves, as Willie said, humble ourselves, he will pull those shortcomings out or those flaws out, even where he will even lovingly reshape us if we let him.
yeah.
And I got a new insight and vision of that right there today as I restudied. I'd read this the first of the week and I read it yesterday, and I read it, went through it again today, and I guess it was yesterday when I saw this, saw it in a little different light. And this is really good news, that God's out for our good, not out for our harm. And He wants to shape us and mold us if we will allow Him, if we'll humbly allow Him to work in our lives. And so when we make a mess of our life, He will come into our mess and help us to clean that up. And that's what He wants. And as He's doing that, not only will He clean it up, but then He will shape it into the masterpiece that He wanted for you. And that's great. And, Willie's read this scripture out of Isaiah 45:9, and he said, does the clay speak back to the Creator and say, stop, quit, leave me alone? Well, oftentimes we do. We as humans to God, okay? The clay doesn't, because it's inanimate, and it does yield itself to the potter, but we need to recognize that He, as I've got down here, Romans 8:28, says that we know that all things work together for our good, although we may not see how it works together for our good at the moment. But as that quote I read earlier from, I think it was Napoleon Hill, that said that in every adversity lies the seeds to overcome that adversity. And so that's, and God wants to work all these things together in our good, if we allow Him. Now, the trouble is, we will sabotage ourselves. We hurt ourselves. The enemy is not out there. The enemy's in me, as I've already said, right? And so what we have to do is focus on the real beast. The real beast is in me. And if I can get that, I can affect everything out here. Trouble is, we oftentimes want to try to control all this out here.
Yeah,
And we let the beast in me run wild.
beast of burden.
Now, it's not bad to have the beast in there, okay? I'm not saying it's all bad. In fact, I like the quote I read here a while back about, is it better to have a warrior in the garden or a gardener in a war? Okay, well, actually, I think it's better to have the warrior in the garden because when it comes down to it, if the war breaks out, you do have a warrior. But at the same time, that warrior that's in the garden has tamed the beast, if you know what I mean. And anyway, I like Jordan Peterson. He talks a lot about that nobody's worth anything if they don't have some of that in them but they must tame it. They must deal with it. And that's what we're talking about here. Because we've let it run our life. It's picked us up and carried us away in so many different ways. So let's go forward. I know I've kind of deviated a little bit, but I wanted to read this next statement out of the material we had. When we put our lives in God's hands, He will reshape us as He sees fit. And if it's God's will, could it be bad? Isn't it going to be a good thing for us? You know, Jeremiah says, I have a plan for you, a plan to prosper. Okay, and we need to. I got it right here. It says, Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, saith the Lord." He knows the plans, and he wants to work them in us. But again, we have to be willing to align ourselves with His will instead of our will. That's what giving. That's what this whole lesson is about giving up our control and allowing Him to have control in these areas of our life that we're out of control. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm gonna read. I have a scripture to go with question number 2, and question number 2 was, have I ever become impatient with God's timing in the process of changing my heart or my character? And the scripture that I came up with was Psalms 31. There it is. Psalms 31. My times are in your hands. God has it all in His hands. And that's hard for us to understand how that can be. But all the time is in His hand. And so I learned many years ago, I set a schedule. I set an agenda, what I want to get done on a day. And in my early years, I'd get very frustrated, and then if I got frustrated, I got angry, and if I got angry, then I would react, you know what I mean, right? And then I realized I set an agenda, but God has His agenda. And sometimes it aligns with my agenda, and sometimes it doesn't. But I also found out most of the time I got my agenda done, which I think He probably gave me, but He rerouted me in many different ways, and I still got it all done. So I had to learn to be what you were talking about by being patient. And that's not easy. Okay? Because there is a time to push, and there's a time to let go. And it's knowing when that is. And you know, that started in potty training when we were babies. When to hold on, when to let go. Trouble is, we've gotten that kind of mixed up in our life. We want to hold on to everything, and we never want to let go. But then sometimes we do, and then we make a mess of things. Uh-oh. You know what I mean?
I feel like sometimes when the harder I try, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, and then I have days that can't be any better. I couldn't buy them if I had the money.
Yes, yes.
It varies.
Yes, well, and the reality is, and that's because I may not be correct in this, but this is my
Right.
thoughts, is that's because when we feel that way that things are bad, is because we don't see the whole picture. We only see this narrow slice. And when we back up, and you have backed up here because you look at the overall things, you see how all these things work together somehow. Because I've told God, I don't know how you're going to work all this out for my good, but I'm going to believe that you will, even though I can't see it. I prayed that prayer multiple times. And the fact of it is, after a while, you grow because of those experiences and that awareness, because the trouble is we live a lot of life that we're not even aware of what's going on and what God has done in our life and how He's intervened. Because He doesn't always give us lightning flashes to show us where He's intervened. We have to be aware of them. And oftentimes it's after the fact. So anyway, and so that's the reason why it's so important. And the trouble is, also another aspect, the reason why we don't see Him is because we're so threat focused. We're always focused on the threat because God wired us that way as a survival. But we have to grow up and mature and recognize not be so intense on looking for the threat, but have grateful practices and look for the good things. Even if it's doing it at the end of the day, listing 2 or 3 or 5 things or 10 things that you can be thankful for. And they don't have to be big things, they can be little things. Hold on a second. Sorry, had to sneeze. And so what we have to do is we need to be aware, and the more we choose to be aware of the grateful things or the good things we should be grateful for, the more we choose to be grateful, guess what? You have a greater opportunity and propensity to see those good things. Okay, it's called the reticular activating system, if you want to know particular. So, let's see. I lost the scriptures again. I had other scriptures. Hopefully, yeah, there it is. Didn't disappear on me. Let's see. That's it. Yeah, this was another patient scripture. It said, this is Psalms 41. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and He turned to me and He heard my cry. And that's really hard. I know in some of my early years, I remember there was a time in my life that I felt like God wanted me to stand and stand therefore. That was the scripture He gave me. And I told Him, I said, God, I'd rather fight or I'd rather just leave, run, not be a part of it. And He told me to stand. And that was way harder than fighting or running. And because if I was going to stand, I had to stand with, in my opinion, a reasonable amount of character, integrity, and then at the same time, I had to still continue to take care of and protect people so they do the best I could that they wouldn't be hurt. So, but God hears us and He intervenes in us. Some of the hard stuff is that remember, in the middle of these difficulties lies the seed, the solution to this. And sometimes we have to be willing to, like a seed, has to go into the ground, be buried, crack open, die, and then sprout. And it's a process. And oftentimes we have Our humility is being willing to recognize, give up control, even it's kind of like a death process, you know what I mean? And then because of that, then the life that's in the seed is able to come out, the life that's in us. A little bit of philosophy there, but. Okay, question number 3. What keeps me from letting go? Willie talked about this a little bit. I wrote down probably, I think the number one thing for me and for most of us, Willie said insecurity, isn't that right? And I wrote fear. I think fear is some root of insecurity, and that we're afraid that if I let go, then I'm going to be out of control. And if I'm out of control, how's that going to work out? That's too hard. That's too scary. That's too tough. But if you have a driver at the wheel that knows where we're going, when I went to Mexico, we hired some guides, and they took us in a van, and they knew where we were going. They knew the best way to get there. They know the safest way to get there. They knew how, and I had to trust them. Now, Whitney, my daughter, set the guides up. She did research. She checked them out. She made sure that we could trust them, that they were highly recommended, and that other people were happy with this company. And so we did our due diligence. But then, even after all that, you still had to be willing to trust. Well, trust starts small and it can grow. And so we just like everything, you take little bitty steps, and that trust either grows or it doesn't grow. You earn that, okay? And if you don't earn it, you don't get the trust. And so anyway, that's just the way things are. And I'm not for blindly closing my eyes and jumping off a cliff and thinking that somebody's going to take care of me that way. I don't think that is prudent, right? So, but trusting in Him, and we have built up a relationship, and we talked about this last week, and about clearing off the road and building up a relationship with Him, and trying to remove those things that are blocking us from having a relationship with God, and giving up control is one of those things. And what we have to do here is we have to be willing to let these things go. But He doesn't demand. I don't believe, at least that's not the way He's worked for me. It's preached this way and it's taught this way, but that doesn't mean that it's correct. In theory, yeah, but in practice, there's no way to go from 0 to 100 in a trusting level, and it's a process. And I think God knows it, and He's willing to work with us, and He takes us one step at a time, and lets us grow and develop and mature, and let that trust for Him and that confidence in Him continue to grow. And if we all think back in our life, we've had God events. We've had experiences that cannot be explained, that God intervened. I had a lady this week was complimenting me on sharing with some people, and they said, I had this experience where it was scary and hard, and there was nothing that I knew to do, and I knew I had to get serious with God, and I did. And God intervened. She said, so I've had that. I've seen that. It happened. And that's happened to all of us, if we'll look for it and see it. Would you agree with that? This number 3 is, and we're going to be short here tonight, but question number 3 is, what keeps me from letting go? I think it's our own fear, or lack, our inability to be humble, maybe, or trust, because it takes trust to humble yourself, right? And so if fear is bigger than faith, it wins out, and we have to grow that, so that God can shape me. Well, if we'll trust a little bit, God will move in our life a little bit. And that may not sit well with you the way I said that, but I believe it to be so. And God's happy with that, because see, trusting with Him a little bit, that's faith. And faith pleases God. And God's never going to look at that in a negative way, because that pleases Him, your faith. Does that make sense? And a little faith will position you to make bigger steps of faith. Oftentimes we want to just shut things off. The emotions in our life, we just want to turn them off. We want them out. Okay, we want to deny that they're there. We want to avoid the problem. We want to stick our head in the sand. And what happens, or can happen, is what they call a emotional riptide can occur. Now around here, we're not on the ocean, but from what I understand, and I was swam in the ocean when I was in Mexico, and had a little bit of one of those, because it was along a jetty there. And what happens is all the water comes in, but it has to find a way to get out, and it creates can create a little river inside of the ocean going out when all the other water's coming in. If it keeps coming in, some of it's got to go out, and so it can go out faster and stronger, because it's harnessed and kind of focused into it's like an underground river, riptide. And oftentimes, if we deny or suppress or avoid or deny the emotional stuff in us, sometimes we can create these emotional riptides. And because when we put that emotional energy in us and we compact it, it's going to come out somewhere. Sometimes we call it rage, okay? Or we make more mild terms and call it anger. We can call it reactions. We can call it going insane. And all those things could be. And that's because we didn't take care of ourselves, as we talked a lot for like 14 or 15 weeks on self-care. We didn't take care of ourselves with self-care. If we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't help ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, then we set ourselves up for mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual reactions. And then we say, what happened? How did that happen? It just seemed to pick me up and carry me away. It pushed me out into the ocean. I thought I was going to die. And that's because we weren't taking care of ourselves. At least that's my thought. So, any comments from anybody?
Yeah, I was out in Seattle, you was talking about the rivers and stuff. I said, what's so important about the tide coming in up in Seattle? They said, we eat. they get mussels, and I went out there and their seafood was ungodly high. So
Yes.
I went to the ocean and got it for 6 cents a pound.
6 cents a pound.
But anyway, then that reminded me of, I said, what is so important? I mean, 4,000 people out there, when that tide comes in, and there was 250 nationalities at this place I worked. And they was such good people. They brought me dinner every day. They ate rice, and they brought me to work. And I don't know how they found out it was my birthday, but they had a big party.
Uh,
And they was really nice. They had like $350,000 home. I couldn't understand them. They come to my house, I said, you gotta speak English, no long distance calls, and I said, you gotta respect everybody. I had the awfulest, dumpiest place you ever seen, and they loved it. I said, what, you ain't got a home? I would ask them, they were good people though.
sounded like they were sharing
They were
their heart with you.
They came from the Philippines.
Yeah.
Their boyfriends and husbands in the service, and they were really respectful, quiet. You know, and I told them, I said, you know, I used to not talk, and for years when I was growing up, and I didn't know how to. I learned how to say good morning, good evening, and how's your family in 100, and it took me a long time. And I would say that, and it was like, why? I said, because I work with you every day. I work beside you. And they was amazed at the effort I put in. But they were really nice. I'm astonished at people, how they can be nice if they want to. I don't mean that literally. They are nice people, but they was extremely nice up there.
And to do that, you know, that in my mind, I thought how, you know, they had to be willing to be open and humble
Oh, yeah.
to do that, and so that's great. Anything else? No. I'm going to close with this little some information that I got. Just going to touch on, and this was 3 vital questions. And the vital questions are, you know, how to think about what you're going to say to someone, how you're going to talk to them. You know, the truth is powerful, but we need to be careful how we speak the truth, because we should speak it in love, right? Because the letter kills, but it's the spirit that brings life. And so we need to be aware of how we speak that truth. And so I found these 3 vital questions, and that is this. Does this need to be said? What you feel like needs to be said, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Does it really need to be said? Okay, does it need to be said? Next question. Does this need to be said by me? Okay, now some people just always want to stir things up, say things. It gives them a sense of power, and that's some of that ego showing out there. So these are kind of like how to address your ego, maybe. And so does this need to be said by me? Number 3, does this need to be said by me now? So, you know, there's been times I knew a situation with people, I knew the answer, but I knew it wasn't time to speak it. And how did I know that? Well, one way I measure that is because if they didn't ask me for my input, then it's not time to give it. Well, some people, they can't stand that. If they know the answer, they got to say it, right? And I say this, I'm thinking that has more to do with you than it does to do with them or the truth. So, how's that?
I also say timing is important.
Timing always is important.
Very important. You know, like you can get a good job, or you can meet somebody, and I tell people, I said, I have unique timing. I said, sometimes when I least expect it, I pray for it. It's funny, if I ask for something, I get it.
Yes?
You know, we discussed about talking and hearing the Lord last time I talked to you, and he doesn't speak to me, but he shows me, like you were saying, through people.
Yes?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I have a lot of heavy discussions with him. I really
Well,
do.
I mean, why not, right?
Yeah.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. And again, make healthy choices.